The moment Samantha Markle opened her mouth, it wasn't just another family feud bubbling under the surface. It was a detonation that sent shockwaves straight through the polished marble halls of royal mythology.
The stories would come out. So apparently, according to other journalists, we found out that there were a lot of porcupines probably told to the royals and even to Harry when they met her. And in order to cover up,
talk to Andrew Morton, talk to Tom Bauer, all of these people that have written books about her have been like, it's a struggle to get to the truth of who this female was before she meets Prince Harry.
So all of these lies started coming out, but we didn't know that she had told the royal family so many porcupines.
Because this wasn't some distant critic throwing stones from the shadows. This was blood. This was family. This was someone who had lived inside the story before the fairy tale ever reached the palace gates. And suddenly, the narrative everyone thought they knew began to feel fragile, like glass under pressure. Let's be real for a minute. If royal hypocrisy were an Olympic event, Meghan wouldn't just show up. She'd sweep the podium without breaking a sweat. Every time another speech drops about authenticity or living your truth from that Montecito mansion, people freeze mid-scroll and squint at their screens.
And to be proud and to empower other women when she's out there using her platform, be proud of who you are, work hard. You don't have to pretend to be someone else. You don't have to dress like Diana. You don't have to say you got grants and scholarships. Give accolades to those who bring you.
Like, did that really just happen? It's the kind of moment that makes you check your Wi-Fi twice just to be sure you heard it right. Because something about it doesn't sit easy. Then the plot thickens. And not in a small way. Enter Samantha Markle, Meghan's half-sister and longtime critic, who recently started hinting that the public may not have been given the full picture. That was the moment everything shifted. Because Samantha wasn't screaming, she wasn't begging for attention, she wasn't chasing cameras.
So it makes sense. Oh my God, I've got to keep everybody away because if they start talking, the lies.
She was doing something far more dangerous. She was planting doubt, quietly, calmly, precisely. And in the world of royal image control, doubt is poison. Doubt doesn't explode, it spreads. For years, Meghan's image had been engineered into something untouchable. The outsider who became an insider. The woman who broke tradition. The voice of authenticity wrapped in palace silk. Every interview, every appearance, every carefully crafted word reinforced a narrative so clean it felt untouchable. But now, suddenly, there was...
A lot of people are saying, oh, this is from her first boyfriend that was, but it's not him. Apparently, it was the cousin. It's pretty shocking, isn't it? One thing is curious. He does mention that she looked pregnant in the article, but he says that's me standing with her, but he doesn't deny it. Her cousin in this article did not flat out deny and say that she wasn't pregnant with my child. He just says she looked pregnant and that's me standing with her. People were saying all kinds of crazy things. Why can't you just deny?
Friction. Suddenly, there was tension. Suddenly, someone who knew her before the crown was pulling at threads the public never even realized existed. This wasn't some random rant tossed online at 2 a.m. It didn't feel emotional or messy. It felt planned, measured, intentional. For years, Meghan's image has been packaged like a glossy fairy tale. The modern Cinderella, the actress who married a prince, survived ruthless headlines and stepped out as a polished activist voice. It's clean, it's powerful, it sells. But lately, online chatter has been poking holes in that shiny surface. And when people start zooming in, that Pinterest perfect image begins to look more like a reality show where a few key scenes never made the final cut.
What we said, everything I said in the beginning was favorable. Nobody printed that. And when I said nothing, they created stories. And it was really just, and why? It would have been so easy to be honest about who she is.
She's reinvented herself so many times throughout the last 44 years.
And that's when the internet did what it always does. It went hunting. Because once the idea is planted that something might not match the official version, people don't just sit back. They rewind, they replay, they dissect. Old interviews resurface. Forgotten clips came back to life. Words that once floated past unnoticed suddenly carried weight. Now, let's slow this down and be fair. There is no confirmed proof of secret files, hidden timelines, or buried family records. What we have right now is speculation, rumors bouncing across social media, old interviews getting dusted off. But when a close relative suggests parts of the past were cleaned up, people don't just ignore that, they start digging. And dig they did. Because this wasn't just about gossip anymore. This was about credibility, about control, about whether the story the world had been sold was the full truth or just a version that survived editing. That's when a seemingly insignificant moment from years ago came crawling back into the spotlight. A casual remark, a passing sentence, something so small nobody cared at the time.
She was a caddy for all of my celebrities. I had Joe Montana. Anybody that's here was at my tournament in 2008. She was one of the Jill and Ojo girls that were caddies that I pawned them off as caddies to the highest bidders. She was so loved. You know, I'm laughing because I'm like, good for her. I mean, she met the prince. She made a great life for herself. Good for her. Everything you're not supposed to be. Multi-ethnic, and she's been married. She already has a kid from someone.
But now it looked different. Now it looked like a breadcrumb. But fast forward to now, and that old comment hits different. It's not being treated as fact. It's not hard evidence, it's something else entirely. It's a spark, and the internet loves a spark. Because once Samantha Markle started hinting that there were pieces the public never heard about, everything shifted. That old clip resurfaced, and instead of being laughed off as random gossip, it started to look like a breadcrumb. A small one, but still a breadcrumb, and breadcrumbs lead somewhere. Maybe Paula wasn't trying to stir anything up. Maybe she simply said something ordinary that later took on a bigger meaning. Maybe it was nothing at all. But in royal circles, things rarely disappear completely. Stories don't vanish. They sit quietly in the shadows, waiting for the spotlight to swing back around. That's the thing about buried stories. They don't die. They wait. And Samantha, she wasn't shouting, she was implying. And right on cue, critics jumped in with the usual lines. She's jealous. She wants money. She's chasing attention. Sure, those arguments exist. But this time felt different. Samantha didn't rant. She didn't run to tabloids. She didn't grab a mic and go wild. She stayed calm, controlled, precise. And in the world of image control, that kind of restraint can hit harder than chaos ever could. Because calm isn't weakness. Calm is confidence. Calm is someone who knows something and doesn't need to prove it yet. And suddenly, Samantha didn't look like the angry outsider anymore. She looked like someone holding a secret. Almost like she was saying, I could say more, but not today. And just like that, the energy shifted fast. Suddenly, she wasn't framed as the bitter sister. She looked like someone holding a piece of the puzzle. No documents, no screenshots, no big reveal, just the idea that something might exist. And that idea, it spread like wildfire. Within hours, the internet was dissecting everything. And wildfire doesn't need proof. It feeds on possibility. Forums exploded, timelines were mapped, old photos analyzed. Every silence from Meghan's side became louder than any denial ever could. Because silence in moments like this isn't peace. Silence is strategy. Silence is control. Silence is pressure building behind the scenes. And Samantha, she didn't break it. She let it grow. She let the questions multiply. She let the narrative breathe just enough to keep it alive. Because she understood something the palace never wanted the public to realize. Mystery is power, and once mystery enters the story, it never leaves quietly. The moment the phrase "nah, mystery" entered the conversation, everything changed. Because gossip fades, rumors burn out, but nah doesn't argue. Nah doesn't spin narratives. Dina just sits there, silent and absolute, holding answers nobody can charm, deny, or rebrand. And suddenly, Samantha Markle wasn't just hinting at emotional wounds or family disagreements anymore. She was circling something far more explosive. Something permanent. Something that, if ever confirmed, wouldn't just bruise reputations, it would rewrite the entire foundation of a story the world had spent years believing. At first, it sounded almost too dramatic to take seriously. Just another online whisper floating through forums at midnight. But whispers have a way of evolving when the right people refuse to shut them down. Because every time Meghan appeared in public with that flawless composure, every time she delivered speeches about authenticity and truth, critics leaned in harder, not softer. They weren't just listening anymore, they were measuring, comparing, looking for cracks between the image and the implications Samantha had left hanging in the air like unfinished sentences. What made it worse wasn't what Samantha said. It was what she didn't say. She never stood in front of cameras waving documents. She never made wild, reckless accusations. She operated with surgical restraint. She allowed just enough ambiguity to keep curiosity alive. And curiosity, once triggered, becomes impossible to control. It spreads through timelines, it infects conversations, it forces people to revisit moments they had already accepted as settled history. Because this wasn't just about one alleged secret. It was about whether parts of Meghan's past had been quietly compressed, simplified, or strategically reframed long before the royal spotlight ever touched her life. And then came the internet's favorite obsession, sealed records. Not confirmed evidence, not verified proof, just the idea that certain documents, marriage records, personal filings, family-related paperwork had been sealed or restricted. And in the digital age, nothing triggers suspicion faster than the word sealed. Because sealed doesn't mean false. Sealed means hidden. And hidden means people start asking why. Some critics pointed toward Meghan's early marriage to Trevor Engelson, pointing out how certain details about timelines and documentation weren't publicly accessible. Others began revisiting obscure references, looking for inconsistencies, gaps, or unexplained shifts. None of it confirmed anything. But confirmation wasn't the fuel. Suspicion was. And suspicion thrives in silence. The palace didn't issue clarifications. Meghan didn't address the rumors directly. Her team stayed disciplined, composed, unmoved, and to supporters, that silence represented strength, professionalism, dignity above the chaos. But to critics, that same silence felt like calculation. Because in media warfare, denial kills rumors fast. But silence? Silence lets them breathe. That's when the theories spiraled even further. Amateur investigators started reconstructing family trees, comparing facial features across generations, zooming into childhood photos, analyzing expressions, gestures, bone structure, as if human resemblance itself could answer questions no official document had confirmed. It became less about facts and more about patterns. And patterns, when interpreted through suspicion, become stories of their own. Some observers noticed how Samantha never fully withdrew her implications. She never retreated. She never issued apologies or corrections. Instead, she remained steady, calm, watching the storm she had ignited continue to grow without needing to feed it directly. Because she didn't need to. The public was doing it for her. Meanwhile, Meghan continued forward, projecting the same controlled confidence she had mastered since entering the royal orbit. Public appearances remained polished. Interviews stayed carefully framed. Her lifestyle brand pivot toward wellness, personal growth, and curated authenticity continued as if the noise didn't exist. But behind the scenes, insiders whispered about tension, about crisis management meetings, about teams monitoring public sentiment in real time. Because even if rumors are false, their impact isn't. Perception alone can destabilize carefully constructed narratives. And perception was shifting, not universally, not conclusively, but enough to create friction. Because Meghan's brand had always been rooted in transparency, in telling her truth, in reclaiming her story from institutions that, according to her, had misrepresented her. But now, critics were flipping that same expectation back onto her. They weren't asking whether Samantha could prove her implications, they were asking why Meghan wouldn't completely dismantle them. And that question lingered, heavy, unanswered. Then came another ripple through the chaos, references to Tom Bower's explosive book, Revenge. A book that had already shaken Meghan and Harry's carefully managed narrative by presenting alternative interpretations of their rise, their conflicts, and their departure from royal life. While the book didn't confirm Dina-related secrets, its existence intensified scrutiny around Meghan's past, reinforcing the idea that the public story might not be as airtight as it once seemed. Sources claimed that behind palace walls and media offices, strategies shifted. Messaging became tighter. Appearances became more intentional. Because when narratives are challenged, control becomes everything. And Meghan had always been about control. Control of her voice, control of her image, control of her truth. But Samantha had introduced something uncontrollable: doubt. And doubt doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. It lingers, it evolves, it waits. Right now, there is still no verified Dina bombshell, no confirmed hidden child, no official revelation rewriting the Markle family tree. Only speculation, only questions, only silence stretching across a battlefield of perception. But perception is its own kind of reality, because in the modern age, public figures don't just live their lives. They live inside narratives constantly being rewritten by millions of strangers with Wi-Fi and opinions. Every silence becomes a statement. Every unanswered implication becomes a mystery. Every mystery becomes a magnet for attention. And Samantha Markle understood that better than anyone. She didn't need to prove everything, she only needed to make people wonder. Because once people start wondering, they never fully stop. And Meghan? She continues moving forward, untouched on the surface, unshaken in appearance. But behind the flawless smile, behind the curated interviews, behind the carefully controlled narrative, one truth remains impossible to escape. The story isn't finished. Not yet. And until the final answer emerges or the silence finally breaks, the tension will remain suspended in the air like unfinished business. Because in the world of royalty, image is everything. But mystery is forever. Is forever. Is forever. Is forever.